Welcome to Relationscapes. It's the place where we learn more about ourselves by learning more about other people. I'm journalist Blair Hodges, joining you from Salt Lake City, and our guide in this episode about building LGBTQ solidarity is Professor Kaila Story.
As a feminist, as an academic, as a thinker, I've always believed in the fact that our humanity is tied up with one another. There's absolutely no way for one marginalized group to get to any semblance of liberation without the aid and help and support of another.
As a black woman, Kaila Story hasn't always felt safe in queer spaces, where racism often rears its head in slurs or cringy condescension. As a queer woman, she doesn't always find safety or affirmation within black spaces either. And as a scholar, Kaila says progressive people who preach about liberation under rainbow flags often end up recreating systems of exclusion against each other. And she says that must change. Her book is called The Rainbow Ain't Never Been Enough, on the myth of LGBTQ solidarity, and she joins us to talk about it right now. Kaila Story, welcome to Relationscapes.
Hi, thanks for having me, Blair. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. I really like getting introduced to new words and new concepts in the books that I'm reading, and especially for something that I knew existed, but I didn't really have a name for it. And your book has a really good one that I don't remember encountering before, autoethnography.
Yes.
So maybe everybody but me has heard of autoethnography, but just in case, I want to start there and have you explain, because it really describes what this book is.
Yes, autoethnography is a qualitative research method in which the researcher, myself or anyone else, takes their own lived experiences with certain social political phenomena, whether that be bias or privilege, and they expound upon these lived experiences by connecting them to larger social political issues and structures. And so we can think of it in the tradition of Audre Lorde's writing, for instance, in her book Zami, A New Spelling of My Name. Lorde charts her life in a really non-traditional way in terms of writing her own memoir, but also elaborating and expounding upon how her lived experience reflects the lived experience of many other folks. And these are the systems that are actually negatively or positively affecting that life. And we can draw conclusions about where we are as a society, how we relate to one another as human beings through this kind of research method.
Yeah, you mentioned qualitative, and that's usually set apart from quantitative, right? So
Yes.
like quantitatively more statistic driven, that kind of thing. Qualitative is really about stories.
Yes.
And it's connected with theory too, but it's very story driven and experience driven, right?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. It's that you have this experience and you feel like, one, I'm not the only one who's experiencing this,
Mm-hmm.
and I probably am not the first one to experience this. And how is this connected to larger issues?
Yeah, okay. So like an ethnographer would kind of embed themselves in a community
Yes.
and be an observer. Autoethnography is you're already the embedded one, and you're kind of reflecting on that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
And
That's
you
perfect.
start your book off, too, in a similar way with a personal story. This is when you were going around with your friend. I think you were getting prepared to get married, right? And you were
Yes.
going around, and everybody assumed, because your friend presented as male, that you were the two that were getting married. They didn't see you as a black queer woman.
Yes.
They saw you as getting married to this guy. And so that's the story you start this book off with.
Yeah, I mean, it was me and Jay, and Jay is my former co-host of our podcast, Strange Fruit, and we were we were excited. Jay was excited, and he's a black gay man, and I'm a black lesbian woman, and this event was supposed to be for LGBTQIA wedding vendors, so you wouldn't have to, wonder about, are you going to be a homophobic baker? Are you a homophobic
Yeah.
florist, right? And so you were supposed to be put at ease immediately by that these are all vendors who are LGBTQIA inclusive, and
Yeah,
they're
so you weren't
excited.
aiming to get in front of the Supreme Court through
And
your
no, I was like so excited. And every booth we went to, whether it was the calligrapher or the invitations booth, like they were like, "So when are you guys getting married?" Right? Because it wasn't just for LGBTQIA couples. Certainly, like straight couples could come
Sure.
there, and right. And the presumption was that we were straight.
I probably would have made the same. But you said they kind of should have picked up on it, right? That's
I
your
mean,
sense.
well, I think that
Not to be
I,
stereotypical, but
yeah, not to be stereotypical, but I think that the way that in which we even relate to each other, we don't
yeah.
relate to each other as lovers or
Yeah.
newly or fiancés or anything. I think that there was a friendship, deep friendship you could sense from that. And I do. I don't think that Jay has this kind of traditional, like femme leaning expressions the way he, expresses himself. But at the same time, we had already interviewed on our podcast the folks who were putting on the event, and our podcast was years old, and we really didn't know like these other like kind of Black queer people in Louisville who were doing this kind of work. So not that I assume that they should know us, but that they should catch the vibe or just wait to even say, "Hey, I'm getting married. Me and my wife would like." So they didn't give us that opportunity. It was like, "Hey," and they were like, "Oh, how long you've been together and when are you guys getting married?" And it's like,
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, and that wasn't the only time. The other story was going to Starbucks. I would routinely go there, and then I finally brought Jay, and they're like, "Oh my God, you finally brought your husband." Now, for myself, I'm like, I never wear a wedding ring. I wasn't married.
Yeah.
I just, and I told the barista, they said, "Oh no, we're gay," and she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and I'm like, "Don't be, we're not. We're
Yeah.
happy. We're happy to be
Yeah.
gay." But I
Yeah.
thought, like, because I was having, these experiences, and those are just two of them, but I had been having them since I had come out, since I had realized that I myself was a lesbian, and I felt
Right.
like this has to do with my race. Even if I was in queer spaces, at queer nightclubs, bars, I was assumed to be there because I was friends with Black gay men or gay men, and that I was somehow straight, and there was a suspiciousness that I was treated with in spaces, "Are you here to be homophobic?" Right? And I thought this has to do with my embodiment, right? That
Hmm.
what they're seeing is a Black woman, and they're making these assumptions that Blackness and queerness can exist simultaneously. And I'm like, how? How does that happen when we have like a Baird Rustin and a James Baldwin and an
Sure.
Lorraine Hansberry? I felt like at this point, me growing up in the 90s, I had a real critical awareness of Black queer figures in the past. And
Hmm.
so I just didn't get it. And so I was like, oh,
Hmm.
okay, microaggressions, racism.
Yeah. Okay. And this kind of situation would happen in different contexts you found yourself in, where the different combo of your identities, a Black, feminist, queer, femme presenting, people would try to puzzle together who you were. Like when you were studying gender and women's studies in college, you noticed that your colleagues, a lot of whom weren't Black, would kind of resist talking about race. When you would try to bring race as a component into the discussion in gender and women's studies, you saw resistance there. And then later on in grad school, where you did Black studies, you found that a lot of the people there who were more often Black would see your queerness and feminist politics as a white thing and kind of not want that in the space. So you experienced a disconnect in college, like undergrad and grad, in these two different contexts.
Yeah, certainly. It was like really wild times, but a part of my identity was ejected or rejected from my peers and also professors in each academic space. And so in women and gender studies, when I brought up race or I brought up class, all my peers felt like you're being divisive. We're talking about all women.
That's the word they always use too,
Yeah,
right?
like
That's divisive.
or why are you going to this like specific issue when we're talking about all women? But to them, that meant white,
Right.
and
Hmm.
universality or being universal also registers to many white people as white. And
Hmm.
so this idea of a default human, a default humanity, is inextricably linked to that of whiteness. And so when I'm
Hmm.
trying to talk about sexism and racial inequity at the same time, they're like, "Oh, you're just trying to play oppression Olympics," or "You just want to talk," you know what I mean? And
Right.
then And there was no issue with queerness in that women in gender studies
Yeah.
space. There was no issue with the fact that I identified as a feminist at all. And so then when I get to the Black studies space, I certainly don't have to argue about the impact of race in any kind of way. But I have to argue about my feminist identity and my queer identity, where I'm being told that, queer identity is introduced during enslavement, like all of these conspiracy theories that somehow there is no such thing as Black queerness. And I'm thinking to myself, how is that possible when the architects of Black studies are overwhelmingly, to me, Black and queer?
Right.
Like many folks in academia, we have Du Bois, of course. We have really foundational figures historically, but we also have Baldwin,
Hmm.
right? And so then I would get in classes in which they talk about Baldwin, but they talk about how his analysis of race,
Hmm.
never about how he was a Black queer man, and never about how his queerness informed his politic and his insight with regard to certain issues.
Marginalization, especially because race
Right.
and sexuality and gender identity all can be
Right.
part of marginalization.
Exactly. So it was wild. I mean, I really in each space I pushed back against those things, and in each space, fortunately for me, I did have colleagues, like peers, and some professors who were great mentors
Hmm.
and great mechanisms of support, because I don't feel like I would have been able to be finishing.
Well, yeah, and especially as a grad student, you're still figuring so much stuff out as well. So it's like
Yes.
you're there to explore questions and
Yes.
ideas, and out of the gate, some things are getting dismissed because of discomfort, really, with either race or
Right.
sexuality, gender identity, depending on the context. So the book is called The Rainbow Ain't Never Been Enough, and it's named after some art and poetry. Tell us about the inspiration behind the title.
So yes, the I'm paying homage with my title. I'm paying homage to Ntozake Shange, a Black feminist creative who wrote the Koryu poem for colored girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow ain't never been
Mm,
enough. And the reason why is not only because of the foundational work in that Koryu poem. Shange deconstructs all of the type of harms and violence that are directed to Black women during the 70s. And she wants to unearth and make transparent that not only do Black women suffer at the boot of racial capitalism and socialized patriarchy and misogyny, but there's also an interiority in Black women's lives in which they're suffering from domestic violence and intimate partner violence at the hands of that of Black men in their communities as well. So they're navigating racism and sexism from the outside world,
mm,
and then navigating sexism and misogyny from in their own community. And then so it was really controversial, timely, and I thought the way that Shange handles with such like care and tenderness the intricacies and nuances of Black women's lives. I wanted to do that for Black LGBTQ people and
mm,
Latinx LGBTQ people in the book. And so I lift that, right, using the symbolism of the pride flag that just got the black and brown stripes a couple years ago added to it, and how the pride flag, which is supposed to represent the unity of our community and all of the wonder in gender identity and sexualities, and how racism still exists within our communities, misogyny still exists in our communities, and unfortunately, transphobia does as well.
mm. Let's talk about the rainbow as a symbol a little bit more. So you mentioned the flag. There's the Progress Pride flag. I think I've heard it called, right? That was updated in 2017, so people might have probably have seen this. The classic pride flag is the rainbow, obviously. The Progress flag added kind of a triangle on the side with black, brown, and also colors that represent trans folks. Some of them will have a yellow field as well. And some of them a circle representing intersex and I think asexual identities as well. So it's trying to be more specific. Why the new flag? There are some queer people that didn't want a new flag and some that do.
Yeah, and I talk about this in the book, but AJ Hikes, when they're working at the Philadelphia LGBT office into 2017, decides to add the black and brown flags to not only talk about the significance of Black and Latinx LGBTQIA people in the foundation of Pride, in the resistance at Stonewall,
Hmm.
in doing work on behalf of our communities, namely folks like Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera,
Hmm.
and how they were at the forefront of our first Pride March at Christopher Street.
Yeah, these are trans women of color specifically. Yeah.
Yes, yes, right. Sylvia Latinx,
Hmm.
Marsha Black.
Hmm.
And so these are our foremothers.
Yeah.
These are literally the folks who were at the forefront. Also, Miss Major, also Victoria Cruz, Latinx trans woman, Miss Major, Black trans woman. So these are the folks who were advocating and working on our behalf alongside with all other folks. And
Hmm.
so it was a gesture to show and honor these folks that came before us, and also the work that was currently going on and still continuing with Black LGBT organizations and Latinx LGBT organizations specifically.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that element of it. Was as much a awareness raising campaign amongst LGBTQ communities, perhaps even more so than it was like front facing to other people, right? It was like all queer folks facing marginalization should be standing together and recognize all the intersections of that and how it impacts people of color and trans folks and everybody in sort of different ways, but trying to bring everybody together. That was a message for queer communities who had
Yes.
racial divisions.
Yes, it wasn't this thing to say like here for the cishet community,
Hmm.
right? Like or for mainstream communities. It was a literally a teach in for us as a community
Yeah.
and an acknowledgement that although folks share gender identities or sexualities, there are still barriers and biases that we have to navigate through and we have to get rid of, especially in the time we're in right now.
Hmm.
And basically, in reality, the time we've always existed. There has not been a single moment in history in which queer or trans identity has not been contested,
Hmm.
police scrutinized. And so we've always needed to be with one another. And we can't do that when you have racial bias at the forefront, you have gender animus, you have
Hmm.
transphobia.
Hmm.
So it was all of those things. And yeah, people were outraged, specifically like white cis gay men made their outrage known all over social media and like,
Yeah, this is
um,
ugly, or like, why are we?
yeah,
It's divisive.
yeah, and it was the same. It's the same response. That's
Yeah,
that's what for me. It's like it's the same exact response. It's
yeah.
like when you bring race into the equation, when you talk about race or ethnicity, then it becomes somehow like this is divisive. You're
Hmm.
dividing everyone, and it's like, but this already exists.
Hmm.
People are already online on gay dating apps getting fetishized. There's all types of racialized bias all over.
And
Like
anti-trans stuff. There's the LGB
yes,
movement that's literally like, let's
right.
remove the T from it. Like queer people that are making fun of like the alphabet soup, the alphabet people, and this
Yeah,
kind of
or
stuff.
like and gay folks in this current administration saying like
Hmm.
I'm a normal gay
Yes.
or I'm a regular gay. Like what does that mean and why is there this deep investment of like basically trying to create gay respectability or queer
Respectability.
respectability.
Expand on that. Say more about that respectability angle, because this goes all the way back. This isn't a
Yeah.
new thing.
So gay respectability is really rooted in the term that Lisa Dugan gives us. Lisa Dugan, queer philosopher, feminist icon, talks about homonormativity, homonationalism, in addition to Roderick Ferguson's work on what it means to be that type of gay and this homonormative gay, which means to be a politically neutered queer person without a politic.
You blend
The
in. You're
Yes, and
quote
you're queer.
unquote
You
normal.
you happen to be queer,
Hmm.
right? You happen to be queer. You're not intentionally. You don't see your queer identity as a political identity. You have no political investment in it.
Hmm.
All you want to do is to be able to spend money, buy things, right? So all you want to do is to be able to capitalize on your consumerist
Yeah, it's
identity.
individual, right? Like
Yes,
individually directed. I want
yes,
my spoils just like anybody else can, and I'll wear the right
yes,
clothes to do it. And my voice will sound the right way, and I won't look, I'm not going to look scary to
yes.
people.
And in fact, homonormative folks, it's not just this kind of general apathy to being civically engaged or politically engaged. It's also a deep investment in naming oneself a normal gay or disparaging other queer people and other LGBTQIA people that are in your community.
You're one of the good ones.
Yeah, saying that they're out of control. They act too flamboyant. They're making this happen. I'm not like that, right? I'm different.
This happens with race as well. This is the same thing that goes back to like Booker T. Washington had the whole respectability thing. We're going to be like the best black people and whites will accept it, but we have to earn the acceptance by like living up to it, sort of a thing.
Yeah, certainly taking on, it's an individual taking on mainstream social mores, code switching, changing their speech, their dress to conform to what mainstream society says is professional, says is, whatever society, mainstream society defines as decorum or tact. And so trying to mimic oneself after that, thinking that that performance and that behavior will keep one above the fray.
Yeah.
And that they will not somehow, racism won't come down on them, sexism won't come down on them, right? It's the same thing for many women feeling pressure not to cry or be emotional in any way in a workspace, because they already know in that workspace,
too emotional.
Sexism is abound, and so they don't want to be stereotyped in that way. So
men certainly aren't emotional. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the progress flag itself is so emblematic. I mean, that's what flags are supposed to be, I guess, but so emblematic of this entire dynamic. And when it came out, it enacted the whole problem it was speaking to. Like the way that people responded to it was like, oh, that's ugly, or like we don't like that, or this is divisive. That's not respectable. We're trying to have this mainstream pride that that we can have all our corporations come and sponsor all our parades, and we're going to convince everybody in the world that we're just these normal people, and that's how we'll earn acceptability.
Certainly.
And so these divisions, they are present from the very beginning. We see it in queer communities. We see it in Black communities. We see it in feminism, this kind of ongoing battle between respectability and not respectability. And so The Rainbow Ain't Never Been Enough is also, as a title, reminding readers of the original pride flag back in 1978 was when that one was created. And like we said, that rainbow was supposed to be representative of the whole community, but the reason it wasn't enough is because these other prejudices continued within the movement. Like, I'm always tempted to believe that a marginalized person will find common cause with every other marginalized person, and it just, unfortunately, like, that's not the case.
And
it's
I
not
think
automatic.
that it seems to be so obvious and so plain that someone who is racially oppressed would understand what it would be like to be sexually oppressed. But that's actually something that people literally refuse and have a deep investment in not seeing for whatever reason. They don't want to find the common thread with another person that is marginalized. They want to say, you're making up your marginalization. Your marginalization is not that heavy. Mine is more severe. Or, and I don't know what I mean, and James Baldwin, really nailed it when he said that he thinks a part of the reason for racial animus in LGBTQ communities had to do with white gay people feeling robbed that they weren't able to capitalize on their whiteness due to their queerness. So they weren't able to act whiteness or white privilege in the same ways because of queerness. And so they wielded it in bigoted ways toward others in their community.
It's a scarcity mindset too, right? It's like there's only so much justice and equality to go around. I need to get into the charmed circle. I need to get into the cool club, and then I can help keep other people out. And by doing that, I'm proving that I belong in the cool club.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And I have to say, like, some of that I think is born in a need for safety, born in desperate circumstances, and when marginalized people are pitted against each other, it only benefits the oppressors. And I feel like it really, I don't know, I'm a white cishet guy. These are things that I've had to listen to stories to really start to wrap my head around.
Oh, yeah. Like, for me, I've always believed that as a feminist, as an academic, as a thinker, I've always believed in the fact that our humanity is tied up with one another. There's absolutely no way for one marginalized group to get to any semblance of a liberation without the aid and help and support of another. And I'm not sure why folks want to keep investing in these siloed and alienated ways from one another. They would rather view the difference and therefore reject the other human than see the common thread and see the similarity. But it's also, we have to be honest about the fact that white racism in particular is something that is homegrown. It is something that is socialized from the very beginning of one's life, unfortunately. I mean, if African Americans learn that they are Black by the age of 3 because of their experiences with white racism, then white children certainly know what race is, what racial difference means. And so there isn't necessarily a growing out of that, even if one goes to college, even if, right. And folks continue to racially segregate themselves as well. And so then we all at the gay club thinking that everybody's got us, we all at the gay club, everybody gay, we got all this in common, and not really. We still live in a deeply segregated America.
Yeah.
We still socialize with one another in racially segregated social groups. So we have to get there in a way in which we see the fact that people's lives improve when those lives on the bottom of their lives improve.
It really does lift all boats.
It really does.
And if you don't, the possibility of oppression persists. So if you're
Yeah.
building your liberation on a system that discriminates against someone else, then that discrimination itself can always circle back.
I mean, I completely agree. And I think that, like, for instance, when I think of reproductive technologies, IVF, when I think of the idea that shows like Love is Blind, which typically show cis-het couples, cisgender, and also heterosexual couples trying to find love. And then when they find them, they say, I found my person. Where does that come from? Where does that non-gendered language come from? I found my person, you're my person, right? The idea, even Disney is trying to expand ideas of what true love means, and that we need more than just romantic love with Frozen, right? And Elsa
Sisterly
figuring out,
love,
like,
yeah.
right? So that's the love of her life. When we think about the idea of gay folks trying to foster, adopt, and have their own families, that expanded the possibility of cishet people, one, saying, I don't want no family. I don't want kids, right? So like queer and trans people's existence and the ways in which they've made their families have expanded definitions of family, have expanded definitions of relationship, connection. And cishet people have all benefited from that. They use the language. Yeah, if I see one more post from a cishet person saying, I'm so excited for my Friendsgiving. Chosen family.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, chosen family. This is,
You also mentioned like when you're in the club and like all these like white folks will start speaking to you in AAVE or start like where you're like, just because you're Black, they think they can just like.
Oh, yeah.
And there's so much borrowing already from drag culture too, which was so rooted in Black culture that now like queer communities will borrow Black aesthetics without any kind of recognition that that's really what they're doing. And, that has been a thing.
And that's the thing, because that means that Black people are being viewed, even if they're Black and LGBTQ, they are being viewed as ornamental. They're being viewed as like dolls or things that, little commodities.
I think like
so
mascots too. Like, oh, that's my mascot. Yeah.
Yeah, but as soon as I walk in, and it's not even like they haven't said hello, we haven't said a word to one another.
Yeah.
But they'll just start snapping, girlfriend, and it's like, girl. And that's so there's a presumption that I'm excited when they do that, right? Because every minoritized person is excited when folks who are in a space of racial privilege mimic what they think Blackness is. We love it so much. I mean, it's so ridiculous, and so
also, like, not all Black people have that same aesthetic anyway. So it's like, it's making a presumption from the get-go of like who a person is and how they even speak.
Certainly, exactly.
Well, you mentioned Love is Blind. I want to talk about media for a sec. You've got some good analysis of media in the book. For example, you talk about
Thanks.
how humans learn to value different kinds of bodies and different kinds of people based on media representations. You really focus on how TV shows and movies and stuff really make a big impact on us. And I think there's maybe still some skepticism about that out there. So I want to hear you just talk about what TV does to us, what like scrolling Instagram can do
Yes.
to us and how we think about race.
Of course, yes. Well, for me as an only child growing up, I was always a media kid. I loved television,
Mhm.
movies, and I would notice that, as a kid, especially growing up in 1980 when I'm little, and the 1990s when I'm a teenager, there wasn't no black people on TV. I mean, in the 80s, you had Dallas, you had Dynasty.
Later on, you had Cosby,
Yeah, then you had Cosby, and then you had Different World.
but that was, yeah, we had like a few black shows. But look at Cosby's show was coded quite white, like the respectability politics again, right? He
No,
was a
certainly.
doctor,
It's
yeah.
a middle class black family. And if anything, we can argue whether or not they were supposed to be middle class. I mean, they owned their own brownstone. Cliff was in
Mm-hmm.
private practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Claire was a partner at her law firm.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
so
she
they were, I
was.
mean, it's pretty wealthy.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing when we think about Home Alone. Home Alone, that is my favorite film. It's like one of my favorite Christmas
Yeah.
films. But they were supposed to be like this normal income family. And I'm like, excuse me.
They're going to France.
They had 5 kids, and each kid grew up and had their own bedroom. And the
Yeah.
bedrooms were elaborate. They're all going to Paris for Christmas. They have a 2-car garage. They live in the Chicago suburbs.
Yeah.
But somehow we are supposed to believe that they're like a regular,
Yeah.
everyday family. And that's what I mean about whiteness and wealth somehow registering to us as universal.
Yeah.
This is that story in Home Alone is a universal tale, and people watch it at Christmas, regardless of race and place. They all
Yeah.
enjoy it. And so we are getting sold over and over again this idea that to be what it means to be universal, what it means to be regular, average, ordinary, is also to be white.
Mhm.
And so I do think that media has a particular relationship in our culture, seeing as how we live in such a segregated America. And so more often than not, people grow up in neighborhoods where people look like them. They might have the same income as them. They're certainly mostly have the same race as them. And then, I don't know how many students I've taught that say I'm their first black professor, that
Mhm.
say I'm the third black person they met, that they were 23 years old before they saw another black person,
Wow.
right? Black people aren't in their town, right? So we have this idea that we grow up in this multicultural America, and we really don't encounter the
No.
multiculturalness until we're adults.
I feel like more black people do precisely because of media. Even if you're in a predominantly black area, you're
Yeah.
watching, especially back then, all the network shows, most of the people were white. Like, I feel
Yes.
like black people had a better sense of white culture because of white culture
Oh,
being so
yeah.
predominant than white people ever had.
Yeah, I mean, we black folk, Latinx, Asians, like every race of
Mhm.
human being knows everything it means to be white. They know about white hair products, white skincare, everything because of the bombardment of images and television shows and films, and we don't get that for our communities. And then when we do, when that tries to be inserted in any kind of way, I mean, look at the outrage over the mythical mermaid that was black. Literal
Yeah, the mermaid.
fantasy.
Hey,
Like,
mermaids are
like,
supposed to be white. You're like,
yeah, like mermaids are actually creatures of the imagination.
Yeah.
And guess what? The imagination can have many different races, right? And so the outrage when they were going to have a black character in Star Wars.
Yeah, Stormtrooper
This is
that was
literally
black. What?
it's literally science fiction.
Yeah.
So it literally can
Because
be
white's the
anything.
baseline, right? Now, why are we
Yep.
making it divisive
Yep.
by doing this? You also talk about valuation of people. So, like, if white people are predominant in media, that also sends messages about who's worth something. So, and it can even speak to the self-esteem and the self-regard of black folks and how they feel about their bodies and themselves. And then also gets into the queer communities because of the lack of queer representation in a lot of these shows. So you, for
Yes.
example, say you never saw on TV two black lesbians pursuing relationships with each other, for example.
No, and the only time I did was in black art that wasn't deemed queer. So like Women of Brewster Place which was based on a book by Gloria Naylor. It was a mini series in the 80s, and you have the characters Teresa and Lorraine, and they were black lesbians. And I remember them fondly when I was a kid, and also Suge Avery and Celie in The Color Purple by Alice Walker. And so, black art in particular kind of is way before this idea of mainstream queer art or white art. So the ideas of Glee and like, oh, we're so excited for a show like Glee. And it's like, we've had television shows and films that feature queer characters. But when I was growing up, when I was really searching, right? Because those films come out when I'm in the 1980s, I'm a little kid.
Yeah.
And
same.
they register to me much later. That imagery registers to me much later when I recognize, hey, I'm gay. But when I went to Blockbuster trying to like rent all these gay films because I'm like, I'm gay. I need to know what the T is. What
Yeah.
it mean. What does it mean to be gay?
Relatable stories.
Yeah,
Like,
I wanted to know, and like I wanted to have a girlfriend, and what does that mean to have a girlfriend? And
Yeah.
and so every lesbian film I checked was interracial, right? And Incredibly True Adventures of Two Girls in Love, which is one of my favorites. Go Fish, Bar Girls, and Watermelon Woman by Cheryl Dunye, which is an interrogation of this very phenomena, right? That we only see queer identity when it's in proximity to whiteness.
Yeah.
Right? So even that film, though, had another, kind of interracial couple. And then if we move forward with ideas of interracial couples, and in terms of lesbian identity, I kept seeing it over and over again. And it was something that was bothering me because I know I already had experience with encountering racism in queer spaces more often than not. I mean, more often than not, in my experience, the most volatile racial incidents have been at queer spaces.
I think that might surprise some people.
Yeah, the first and only time I got called the N-word was at a queer bar by the queer owner. Right?
Wow.
And that's in that's toward the end of the book in which I talk about that. And again, I get his bar taken away from him. I didn't want to teach him a lesson about racism because that doesn't seem to work with racists. So I'll take your money. So that worked. And so in conjunction with the fairness campaign. But I was at a queer bar. We were kind of campaigning for Obama, me and my group of friends. He brought dogs in there that were unleashed. I was scared of dogs at the time. And then he like called my one friend the N-word, called my other friend the C and B word. And so then I said, well, I told him who I was, and he was like, well, you can come here anytime. And I'm like, oh, no. You just called that friend the N-word, this friend to be in the C word. So I guess I'm all three of those, honey.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to take this bar, honey. Because, like that, and so to me, what I recognize in that moment is, wow, I'm probably not the only Black queer person he's talked to like this. And I bet this is the only time in which it's mattered to him, because now there's threat of him losing his business. For me, I felt like this was a replication, the lack of visibility in even queer film and queer television. When it came to specifically lesbian identity, I mean, we've had 2 iterations of the L word.
Yeah.
We had the first series of the L word, and then we had the reboot. The Generation Q, honey, still the same thing. Ain't no 2 Black lesbians in it ever.
Yeah, same.
It's like, what is going on? And then, so like, thank God for Lena Waithe, who gives us season 5 Master of None with a Black lesbian couple, who gives us 20s, that series where you have this Black lesbian protagonist who's masculine. She gives us Boomerang, the reboot of Boomerang, where she had 2 Black lesbians in that. So literally, contemporaneously, when I'm thinking of Black lesbian couple visibility, it's pretty much Lena Waithe, who's a Black lesbian herself.
Yeah, it's so strange to me because these are great stories. Like, just for the sake of interesting stories, at least.
Yeah, and we don't have that. Like by equivalent, when I think of Black gay men and Black gay male visibility, we've had such great icons give us such great content. So Ian Patrick Polk, right, with Noah's Ark, with and now I feel like he's an executive producer on P-Valley too, which who loves that? I mean, I love it. And hopefully it'll come back. We don't know, but hopefully P-Valley will return. He gave us The Skinny. He gave us Noah's Ark. Terrell Alvin McCraney, right, gives us Moonlight.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have Blackbird, and so this is about Black gay men giving us examples of Black gay men in relationships together.
Yeah.
Like even Empire, when I think about the show Empire, they had Jussie Smollett's character, who was a Black gay man. And then when they have a Black lesbian, they have her played by Naomi Campbell, and she's with Marissa Tomei. So I don't know
Yeah.
what they're trying to do.
Yeah. It's the same stories happening here. I just,
Orange is the New Black. So we're supposed to believe that in prison, all the Black women was straight. So that's one. That's right.
yeah.
There was only one Black lesbian in the whole prison in Orange is the New Black. Because, right, Laverne Cox's character,
Yeah.
she's straight. So Poussey, she don't have no girlfriend for like 6 seasons. At least, and then they give her the Asian girl, right? So then she has the Asian girlfriend.
Yeah.
So it's just, to me, it's like, girl, okay, anyway, y'all can just make it up. Y'all can just keep making it up.
I feel like there's cover there too, because you can present it as sort of progressive to have interracial relationships, which, true enough, that used to not be a thing on TV, but it's like,
that's so
why
true.
is that so commonly happening with lesbians?
And that's what,
Black
and I
women
want to
in
be
particular?
clear, and that's the thing, I want to be clear. I have absolutely no issue with interracial relationships. I love them. I'm here for them. The more visibility, the better. My issue is, why is that representation to the exclusion of a Black lesbian couple or a Black lesbian family? I feel like 911, the television show 911, gave us a Black lesbian couple with Tracy Toms was one of the women in the relationship. But, even shows like The Fosters. I love The Fosters. I loved both moms. I love both characters. But I would love to see more visibility with regard to Black lesbian couples and Black lesbian relationships when it comes to telling stories, right?
Yeah, and you call on creators to avoid the stereotypes and to include more depictions with dignity and dimension and humanity, not just for the representation of it, but because these are better stories. Like, give us better media, guys.
Yes,
yes. We want better stuff. That's true.
We want all the stories, especially because all of us suffer from not having community with a wide range of diversity in terms of our friendships and our community connections, our work connections. It would be so wonderful to be able to have more examples of the depth and beauty of our humanity.
Exactly.
So more, the more the better.
It makes life richer, because like me watching shows about people that don't look like me, that don't have my background, they're still dealing with fundamental human emotions and circumstances, and like seeing them play out in different contexts only adds richness to my perspective. So yeah, I don't know. There's more about this topic in the book. It's called The Rainbow Ain't Never Been Enough by Kaila Story. And Kaila is a professor in the departments of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies and Pan-African Studies at the University of Louisville. Okay, Kaila, I want to talk about Columbusing. This is another term that I first encountered in this book. So this is really interesting. And you have a chapter on ball culture, and this is where Columbusing gets introduced. So describe what Columbusing is. This is so good for people who haven't heard this.
Yeah, so Columbusing is the act in which a group who is in a privileged position, whether that be gender or race or class, basically lifts or co-ops, takes a pastime, an expression, an aesthetic from a minoritized group and pretends that they, in fact, were the ones who discovered it. And so I remember several years ago, I think Cosmopolitan said, "Oh my God, look at this, sticky buns." And it was this white woman with these little buns all over her hair. And I'm like, you mean Bantu knots, which is a traditional African hairstyle?
Yeah.
They just did something, I feel like in Elle or Vogue, where they had Tracy Ellis Ross and they're like, the cloud bob. You mean the afro?
Cloud bob.
Yeah, they said they were like the cloud bob. And Tracy Ellis Ross got mad at that too, because she didn't know she was being used like that. But yeah, they were like the cloud bob, and everybody was outraged. And so that's literally what it is. And it's the erasure of what creates the hairstyle, the pastime, the expression, right?
Yeah. And this happened in ball culture, which is like early drag and trans folks. This is sort of celebrations. Ball culture were these places where people could go to have a show and to like especially marginalized people. And a lot of stuff has grown out of ball culture. A ton of vocabulary has come out of ball culture,
Yes.
throwing shade. And like
Yes.
everybody knows, whether they know it or not, everybody knows stuff that came out of ball culture. And it's not just the fact that it's been Columbus and kind of taken over. Some people might say, oh, who cares? That kind of stuff can belong to everybody. Your concern is that that stuff gets stolen and reframed and taken out of the original context where it was born, and it allows the people who stole it to ignore the oppression of the people who created it. And that's
Yes.
offensive. That sucks.
Yes,
It's like it.
especially when it's being wielded or weaponized in a racist way, and
Mm-hmm.
you're literally taking from Black queer speak in order to
Mm-hmm.
try and somehow cuss me out as a Black woman,
Yeah.
right? And be like, and right. I mean, so
Yeah.
yeah, so it's something where for me, my students would do it. They would come in there in classroom and they'd be like, hey, Dr. Story, or they'd be like, yes, so they'd be like, word, or and now we have, right,
Yeah. The little
the
finger up
gesture, yeah,
gesture. Yeah. Yeah.
and folks are using it, and the problem is I'm fine with everybody using it. I think that
Yeah.
black queer speak is some of the most innovative speech. It is so much fun. It
There's a
is,
reason it's spread
oh
so
my God,
far.
it's so wonderful. And right. And so I know why people want to speak like that. I know why people want to talk like that. I get it. Just know where it comes from. And
Yeah.
also, you can't be racist when you do it. So
Yeah.
you can be you go ahead and have your racism, go ahead and have your transphobia, but don't be
Mm-hmm.
using all of the gestures from those folks who created it
Yeah.
and and using the right. So don't use the gestures of the folks who created it to bring them harm. And
That's right.
that's the problem. And that's what's happening.
And you talk about how Columbusing has even happened with Pride Month itself has been Columbused a little bit. Its radical origins have been largely hidden or forgotten about. There's a sort of newer corporate pride, even though corporations under this
Yeah.
administration are fleeing away. I'm still not shopping at Target. But it's this apolitical pride that
Yes.
has. Pride started out as a protest. Like Pride, I'm glad we have celebrations and parades and all. That's really cool. And also, if you're cutting out the heart of it, which was a movement for justice and equality and pushing back against all the cultural bullshit that queer people were having to put up with, that's got to be an element of pride too. And instead of Columbusing it and reclaiming it as just a party.
Yes, and that's what, and it's been happening, I'd say over the course of several years now, where I would go to prides, and whether that be Detroit or Philly or Chicago, just the places I've
Hmm.
lived, and they would be much more resource oriented than
Hmm.
consumerist oriented in the sense that um there would be HIV/AIDS testing, there would be breast cancer screenings, there would be things that folks in our community needed, that and to create a space that was comfortable and safe enough for them to be themselves, for them to get this type of care and these types of resources. And that's become less and less as the years have gone on. And Pride now is just a big kind of apolitical party. Like, here's some coffee, it has a rainbow on it. Here's yoga mats. They have rainbows on the store. You know what I mean? And so you
Yeah.
just kind of walk through, and it's a big marketplace. And I feel like there's a place for that too, right? There's a place where folks can go and be free and have joy and let their hair down and right.
Yeah.
But there was definitely much more information and much more resources, social political resources for our
Hmm.
community in early prides. And that's
Yeah. Be
because early
registering
prides,
people to vote and stuff
right.
like
And
that.
I
Like,
think
yeah.
a lot of it has to do with that early prides were literally resourced by the community, other activists,
Hmm.
small business owners. Major
Hmm.
corporations didn't start investing deep into pride festivals, I'd say until the late 90s, maybe early
I
2000s.
would say early
Yeah,
2000s.
I'd
Yeah.
say like early 2000s, and so it hasn't really been that many years,
Right.
where
Around, and I
prides.
would say marriage equality is what really
Oh, yeah.
to me it was like 2015 kind of
Yeah.
marked this transition there where it really opened the floodgates, and now we're seeing the backlash. Now we're seeing people pull back from it, corporations pull
Yeah.
back from it.
Well, marriage equality did that, right? It allowed same-sex folk to get married. It was,
Yeah.
and it also made plain this is a consumer bracket. These folks
Mm-hmm.
in this community are going to get married and buy homes, and they're going to spend money, and right.
Yeah,
And
you
so,
became a demographic is what
yes,
happened. Yeah.
yes. And so, let's invest in this, and let's do gay shirts at Target. Oh, not no more. Let's do black
No.
shirts at Target. Not no more. Right.
Oh
And so now
no.
you have
No, I think they'll have like 2 of them, and they'll be back on a special shelf in the very,
in the
very back of the store.
corner, and they're only available at midnight.
Yeah. Exactly. Come on, Target. All right. By the way, we'll go to a word from our sponsor. This podcast is brought to you by Target.
Oh,
Okay, so we've talked about Columbusing. Don't do it. If you want to learn more about Columbusing, again, it's in the book The Rainbow Ain't Never Been Enough on the Myth of LGBTQ plus Solidarity by Kaila Story. All right, Kaila, right now, as we've hinted at, it's a particularly kind of fraught time for queer communities. There's so much under attack that it's kind of hard to keep track of all of the different innovative ways they're coming up with to harm queer communities and trans folks. And so I'm just wondering how you're personally holding up in the face of this. And I know so much of your work is community focused and really invites people to look at how systems impact communities, not just individuals. But we are, at the end of the day, we're all still individuals as well. So I just wondered, like, personally, how you're holding up and how you're making it through in this particular time period.
yeah.
Because it's not just the queer stuff, too, that obviously
Yeah.
people of color
Voting
are
Rights
also,
Act is very.
it's all across the board. Yeah.
Yeah. Every day is a new type of emotional terrorism, to borrow from my friend Esther Armara, who does emotional justice. But and that's what she said. Every day is a new type of emotional terrorism, whether it's an attack on Black people through the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, chipping away, undoing DEI, the whole abortion medicine, right? That
Yep.
just came up with the Supreme Court, the undoing, the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So women having less and less rights. Now you have strategic and nationwide attacks on LGBTQIA people. I think there were 700 bills that were anti-LGBTQ introduced just this year. And that's been the highest ever. And
Has there ever been a more clear argument on behalf of the reality of intersectionality than how they're going after all of the intersectional things?
Literally, they're making it so clear that bigotry and bias and discrimination exists. They're really making the case for it. But it's been very difficult. It's been more difficult for me to teach my students in terms of them being hopeful about their futures as young queer people, young Black people.
You're seeing more pessimism?
I see more. I see more pessimism. More so, I see more fear.
More fear.
I feel, the young folks are afraid of the economy that they'll enter. They're afraid that they can't pick a job they want. That they're going to have to choose a job to make ends meet. They feel isolated. They feel confused as to why there's so much harm. And this is the thing.
Yeah.
They were
Environmental stuff, obviously.
Yeah, the climate change.
See, it's coming at from everywhere. So what
Every
are you
angle.
doing? Like what?
Yeah, every angle.
And you're supposed to be helping the kids too.
I'm
So I'm
supposed to
just
be
wondering
giving
what
them
you're
hope.
doing.
I'm supposed to
Yeah.
be giving them hope.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I give them information, and I certainly provide them with education, and I'm honest with them about these things. I create a lot of space in my classes to check in with my students about how they're feeling and about some of these things that are happening in real time. So if my class is at 1 p.m. and they just undid the Voting Rights Act, we're going to talk about
right
that.
then.
Right?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about it right then and then. And if not, we're going to talk about it next week. And we're going to relate that decision to the stuff that we've already been learning. So like you were saying, they're literally proving the case. If students entered my classroom and said, you know what, racism is over with, or sexism is done, or people aren't homophobic anymore, what are you talking about? Like literally every day, further and further make that case. And so I've been trying to reach for my joy where I can find it. I swim. It's becoming warmer, so I'm excited to swim. I take walks with my dog all the time, just to touch some grass, and talk to my neighbors just to remind myself that not all human beings have lost it. so, that they are still kind, gentle,
Yeah.
thoughtful people in the world. I remind my students of that. So those kinds of things, like leaning into that, and then more so leaning into community. I think that this is
Hmm.
such a fearful time between storms and weather. To like every day is like an alert day here in Kentucky. It's like thunderstorms, lightning, hurricane,
Hmm.
and to the
Jeez.
planes crashing. Yeah, I mean planes crashing. You gonna be in Tennessee for 17,000 hours, like
Yeah, there's like a genocide going on.
yes,
We're we're at war with Iraq.
yeah,
Like,
it's
what
like
are we
what? It's
doing,
like
dude?
what is happening? And so every
Ah,
day it's something else. Every day is something else. And so
yeah.
yeah, so leaning into community, not trying to isolate myself or hide just because it's scary. But community is going to save us every time. Our connection to one another is going to save us every time. But we got to lean into that and not isolate ourselves and just become fearful. And we have to also
Hmm.
recognize that, I have to recognize this as a Black person, as a woman, and as a queer person. We have been through so much worse. And even though
Mm.
this, to me, is the worst of the worst, we've been here before. And again,
Hmm.
the way that community showed up, we gotta do it. We've been,
Yeah.
we have to do it. We have to show up for one another. We have to show up because even if harm has somehow not come your way yet, you have to know that it is. And you have
Hmm.
to know that in order to stop it, we have to support one another, right?
That's right. And your epilogue does such a good job of this. It's really got strong words for allies in particular. These are
Oh, yes.
people who aren't queer, people who aren't marginalized, but who seem to want to help. And I do think there's a good number of these people. We need more of these people. We need them to do more. So you've seen a lot of people in your life who claim to be allies but aren't actually helping very much. So you have some examples of that. I wanted to kind of close with some maybe call outs that kind of identify less effective ways that people think they're being allies and what people might do instead.
No, certainly. And I think this is an important thing. I think that allies and, have always been important to any major mass movement for social justice, whether you're talking about civil rights, feminist rights,
Hmm.
LGBTQIA rights. We've relied on allies and they've been important to us. And, but when I started teaching and I started meeting folks who are calling themselves allies through student organizing and,
Hmm.
all of these things. I just saw them as kind of invading these spaces of other marginalized students to take up space. And then I would see it in queer spaces when I go to the nightclub. You have, the thing that was the irony and kind of the mean irony. Before same-sex marriages passed by SCOTUS in 2015, you had straight women all the time coming into gay bars with their wedding sashes on.
Hmm.
Like, what the
Yeah.
fuck?
Yeah. For their
Like,
bachelorette parties and
yeah,
stuff.
so it's like, okay, so you're gonna come to a gay club with your wedding sash, right? And so I would ask them too, like, why are you here? So like, gay people can't get married, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but gay people can't get
Gonna
married at this.
celebrate it here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so gay people can't get married. This club is actually not designed for you. This is a gay club. Why are you here? To celebrate your cishet nuptial. Why are you here? Oh, because it's just such a safe space.
It's fun and
Oh,
safe.
oh, so
Yeah.
so you're here so you don't get sexually harassed, right? So
Yeah.
instead of advocating for yourself and justice in your own space, you just be like, mess all that. Let me go over here and then treat this environment as if it's my own personal concert. So you have these women with their wedding sashes, they jump on the stage
Yeah.
when drag queens are performing. They would block the tip line because they didn't know about tipping. They would say like, "Oh my God, I love gay people. My boyfriend is so homophobic." Right? I mean, so like to me, it's like, yeah, no,
But Kyla, they're bestowing their acceptance upon you. Isn't that enough? Aren't
and
they
that's the
benevolently?
That's the thing, Blair. Like, allies need to know, right? And accomplices, right? They need to know that marginalized groups don't need your compliments. We already
Yeah.
know we're wonderful. We know that
Yeah.
the world has it wrong. We don't need like, oh, you're so pretty, or oh, I love gay people, I love trans people, y'all so fun. We don't need all that. We need justice. We need work. We
Hmm.
need you to go into the environment that raised you. Okay. Go into the environment that raised you and tell them how much you love gay people. Oh, you don't want to do that. Oh, so you ain't no ally.
Hmm.
Go into the environment that raised you and tell them how much you love Black people and how you hate racial bigotry. Oh, you don't want to do that. You don't want to confront your racist grandfather.
Well, I set a boundary, so I don't have to.
Right. So all you want to do is spend time all you want to do is spend time in a Black space or a queer
Yeah.
space and go on and on about how much you love Black people, how much you love queer people, but you never want to confront actual racism. You never want to confront actual homophobia and transphobia. None of that does us any good. The compliments and all this favor that you feel like you're showing marginalized people. Nobody wants it. No one has ever wanted it. And no one has ever needed or required it. What we've required and what allies have not done, okay, is work on those people who taught them racism. Go and talk to those people who taught you homophobia, who taught you transphobia. Correct them, enlighten them, advocate for these groups. Oh, but you don't want to do that. You just want to go to the gay club or you just want to date the Black athlete. Girl, go on with that. You ain't no ally.
Yes.
Go on.
And I feel like we might fail at that. Like I could fail. But doing that, I still tried. And I feel like trying to change hearts and minds takes personal stories and personal witness. So I think you're right. Like redirecting our energies into the communities that raised us with these prejudices. And paying attention to who we're voting for. And,
certainly.
And writing our leaders and staying connected and using our voice on social media when we're there. And showing up to the march and also putting our money toward the organizations that are funding the march. And, so there's so much more we could be doing. I love, you mentioned this already, but you talk about not just allies but accomplices. You also mentioned co-conspirators. I want to read this paragraph here from the epilogue. This is, you write, while allyship denotes an individual who comes from a space of racial, gendered, or sexual privilege to stand with a minoritized group or an individual who's already engaging in anti-racist or LGBTQ plus activism, that's allyship, an accomplice focuses their work on dismantling the systems of domination that are in place within our society that are engendering the dehumanization, the harm, and the discriminatory practices that minoritized communities are expected to navigate. So this is like just a great call to be like, hey, allies, that's all well and good. Be an accomplice.
Yes.
That's a really cool reframe. I love that.
Yes, because I think that allyship has almost become like commodified in some sense. Like it doesn't have as deep of a meaning as it once did. And I think that accomplice, co-conspirator, there's a deeper investment. The folks who call themselves that actually show up. You know, a couple years ago here in Louisville, Breonna Taylor was murdered by Louisville law enforcement. There was this kind of standoff between law enforcement and the people in the streets because there were, some uprisings as a result of Breonna and George Floyd. And there were a group of white activists who got in the forefront of that line. That's what it means to be an accomplice. That's what it means to be a co-conspirator, right? Put your body there. Our bodies are there. Our bodies have been there. Put your body there because you know that your body will be regarded with more respect, more humanity, more dignity. And so use your privilege on behalf of others. That's what it means to be an accomplice, and that's what it means to be a co-conspirator. So if we're going to create a human chain of resistance and have a standoff, right, where we're not backing down, we're not leaving this space until justice comes, right, then get in the, right? And so these folks, they got in the front and they formed it, right? And they're like, come through us. Are you going to do this to us? Right.
And they weren't the leaders of it, too. This is the thing I want to remind white people especially about is, like, we don't have to bear the burden of being the heroes. Like, we're not. Like,
that part.
We don't have to bring all the ideas. We have to be there listening and finding out, like, learning from the marginalized communities themselves and letting them lead and just lending our efforts to that. It's kind of the easiest, like...
Yes.
Takes the pressure off. You're just there to help. You're not there to white savior everything. We're here to like listen, learn, and like join in.
Yes, and support.
Like you said, put our bodies on the line. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, the book is called The Rainbow Ain't Never Been Enough on the myth of LGBTQ plus solidarity. So it unpacks the myth that marginalized people always band together. They don't. It's a call for more marginalized people to do that and for allies and accomplices to help that come about as well. So, Kaila, I always conclude interviews with a segment called Regrets, Challenges, and Surprises. And this is a moment for you to reflect on the book itself. on if there's anything. It's been out a year. In fact, the paperback just came out. I'll mention that for people. Congratulations. That also, by the way, means that it sold. That it was a they don't put every book out in hardcover. They put the good ones out in paperback. So good job. And is there anything you would change about it now? Like, do you look at the project itself with any regrets? Or also challenges? What was the hardest part about writing it? Or any surprises along the way? And you could speak to any of those.
Okay, perfect. Well, I feel like I don't have regrets about any part of the book. The only regret I have is I wanted to talk more. I actually wanted to talk more because then I could have gotten into how some of this stuff manifests internationally. Stuff more stuff in the UK, more stuff in other countries. I would love to
Yeah, it's pretty
expound.
U.S. focused.
Yeah, it's very nation focused. And so that's a regret. A challenge was I really thought that this was not going to be that difficult of a process writing a book because I'd written a dissertation and I'd written essays.
Sure, yeah.
Oh my God. It was so difficult. And not because the ideas weren't there or the words weren't there, but just to make the book as conversational as possible, to try my best to not have an academic voice to the book. And it comes in. And so that was probably the hardest thing. So I tried my best with that.
Yeah. Well, and you were trained up so heavily into that academic voice.
Yes.
That to switch out of that register would be
and
tough.
that's the thing. And that's what's interesting to me is my writing voice comes across that way and my speaking voice does not.
Yeah.
So like I'm on the podcast if you listen to any of those podcast episodes of Strange Fruit, honey, baby, I'm very conversational and I'm talking the same stuff, but it's so different. And so my speech so that was a surprise for me that that writing this book made me recognize that my speaking voice and my writing voice, that my writing voice is literally like this academic voice. So I'm trying right now to kind of really do writing exercises and really kind of unlearn that. I don't want that. Like, I mean, it's fine for academic journals and stuff like that. I'm at a research one. So like, we have to publish that kind of stuff, but I've always wanted to be, I've always wanted to be a professor who actual real people read my stuff, not other professors, not other academics. And so, I mean, this was, Bell Hook's gifts, right? This is Kiese Lemon's gift. This is Joan Morgan's gift, right? Brittany Cooper. Like, so I want to be able to write in a way that makes people feel warm and comfortable in the way that they do with my speaking voice, right? The way that my student, those kind of things. So that was a surprise to know that I had two different voices in my head.
Yeah.
And the regret would be more worldwide stuff in these conversations.
Yeah.
And the difficulty in trying to write this book and try my best to write in my speaking voice and not in my writing voice.
Well, you went with Beacon Press, and that's kind of a big part of their wheelhouse, I feel like, is getting academic folks to write more broadly. And
yes. I mean, and I had a wonderful, wonderful editor. I actually had two. I had Maya Fernandez, wonderful, exquisite editor, and I hired a developmental editor, Will Myers, and he used to be at Beacon, but now they're like, what is this? like that? Yeah.
What are you saying?
Yeah, and for them who are again learned, formally educated folk, like they would catch my academic every time. They would be like, look, no, like jargoning.
Like, I will interrogate the implicated status quo.
Yes. It's like, who is this? Who is writing this? Who is this?
Yeah.
Because it's not the way I talk, honey. It's not. It's not.
Yeah. I know when I listen, it's funny because I listen to the podcast a little bit, and this is such an interesting first like public facing book because I can see that hybrid of like really stretching your writerly muscles to kind of resist that voice and to hear the podcast. And I think there's like 300 or so episodes of it's called Strange Fruit, Musings on Politics, Pop Culture, and Black Gay Life. It's all back catalog stuff at this point. But your voice, I see you coming into that, bringing that into your writing more. That it's got to be kind of exciting.
Yes.
Well, Kaila, thanks for talking to us about the book. Again, it's The Rainbow Ain't Never Been Enough on the myth of LGBTQ plus solidarity. And Kaila, this has been really great.
Thank you so much, Blair. I've had the best time. Thank you so much for reading the book, and thank you so much for saying it's good and this talk today. I had a great time.
Another Relationscapes journey comes to an end. Thanks for being here with me. If this is your first time listening, welcome to the journey. I hope you'll check out some other episodes while you're here. I like to recommend fellow traveler episodes that might resonate with you if you liked this one. You might like my interview with journalist Christina Cauterucci. Her episode is called Queer History Repeating. If you're enjoying the show, please rate and review it in Apple Podcasts or rate it in Spotify. Check out this review from SP_review. They said, Relationscapes is compelling, informative, and inviting. It explores relationships with depth and clarity. There's a thoughtful, steady presence to each episode, and we tackle complex interpersonal dynamics without being preachy or abstract. It's accessible and also provides guidance in a way that's actually actionable. SP_review, thanks so much for that review. That's exactly what I'm going for. Another way people can help me grow the show is by recommending it to a friend. So if somebody in your life came to mind while you were listening to this one, send them a link. If you'd like to see some video clips from this episode, some other bonus stuff, you can follow me on Instagram or TikTok @_relationscapes. Mates of State provides our theme music. I'm your host, Blair Hodges, an independent journalist in Salt Lake City, and I hope to spend more time with you soon here on Relationscapes.